Hello everyone, it's 𝐒𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿, and in this video I'm listening to Dynamo by Soda Stereo. I've been quite excited to hear this album for a while now because it has a reputation for being Soda Stereo's most ambitious album. A couple months back I made a video about my first listen to their 1986 album Signos, and if you haven't seen that video you can find it with the link up here. And I really enjoyed it, although perhaps not quite as much as I enjoyed 1990's Canción Animal. It's really interesting to see how the band evolved over time, always centering around the songwriting of Gustavo Cerati, but adapting their sound with the times. And at this point in the early 90s, a new wave of psychedelia was sweeping the rock world in the form of the UK's shoegaze and baggy sounds, and the creative songwriting coming out of the USA's grunge scene. So I go into this album eager to find out how those influences might have affected the Soda sound in 1992. So do me a favor and click the like button on this video and let's get into the album. The album opens with Secuencia inicial, initial sequence, and the sound struck me as not too much of a departure from Canción Animal, just taking a slightly dreamier approach, and the production sounds amazing, way more cinematic than their previous work. Partway through, the song moves into a slightly more aggressive sequence that uses a hypnotic riff that reminds me of something like Run Like Hell by Pink Floyd. And you know, I made a similar comparison to the title track from Signos. It's that kind of delay-fueled riff that gives a lot of forward momentum to a track. The ramped up intensity leads us into an extra dreamlike ending that definitely seems to be taking us into the world of shoegaze. Track 2, Toma la ruta, continues where track 1 left off with the intensity immediately at 10. Oh man, that sounds spectacular. This one has a pretty strong melodic hook though to go along with the overwhelming sound. There's something a bit grungy about the melody, like Cerati's been listening to Pearl Jam or Alice in Chains. Definitely the most hard-edged stuff I've heard from Soda yet, and the song even gets a grimy guitar solo to boot. The next song, En Remolinos, which means in whirlpools, seems to have been named after its sound, as swirling guitar noise fills the stereo space, with a groovy rhythm in the center of it. Sounds great. The guys in my chat agreed there was some of U2's 90s sound in the mix here. I'm personally not familiar with that era of U2 yet, but if it sounds like this, then I'm interested. A dark, noisy ending again leaves me wanting more of it. The bass is especially fantastic here. Primavera Zero begins with a really punky guitar riff and continues in that vein, but it retains the album's dreamy atmosphere with the use of some really effective hushed vocals. The actual melody in this song is not the strongest for me on first listen, but I enjoyed the sound and the guitar solo was a particularly nice touch. Track 5, Camaleón or Chameleon, signals a pretty major shift in sound by opening with a pan flute. I was wondering if we were going into something like the 𝐒𝐻𝐻𝐿 album I recently listened to, but instead it moves into this baggy alternative dance beat. You're twisting my melon, man! But no, he doesn't go full Happy Mondays. Cerati actually delivers a really strong lead vocal on this one. I also enjoyed the middle 8, which changed key at the same time as bringing in a load of extra guitar before stripping it all back again. Very nice. Luna Roja, or Red Moon, has much more of a psychedelic pop vibe that again feels to me like a continuation of what they were doing on Canción Animal. It's a nice song, but my favourite part was definitely the ending, with its noisy, discordant guitar and its deep, dubby bass. I was more than happy that this time they let it go on for an extra couple minutes. Apparently this was put out as a single. I wonder if that ending was played on the radio. It's pretty far out for a single. And speaking of far out, the next song, track 7, is Sweet Sahumerio, which is somewhat surprisingly a heavily Indian-influenced psychedelic jam. There were elements of psychedelia on Canción Animal, and even more so on the songs that we've heard so far on this album. But on this track, those influences spill over into full-on psychedelia. It sounds really good, and it works as an effective break from the layers of guitar noise that have covered most of the songs up to this point. You know, it feels really refreshing. Track 8, Ameba, takes us back down to earth with a tight rock groove. But the melody on this track is quite reminiscent of Only Shallow by My Bloody Valentine. But you know, 𝐒𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻 delivers the entire vocal with his signature passion, and it works really well. This is probably one of the strongest tracks overall. It's exciting and memorable stuff, and yet more absolutely outstanding bass lines on this one too. The alternative dance vibes return on the next song, Nuestra, Our Faith. It's a very 90s sound, but they make really good use of it here, layering sound upon sound over this dancey beat. The bass line is again fantastic, so deep and dubby. I love it. And the way the song builds up over its duration is really effective. One huge highlight for me was when a rhythmic stuttering effect went over the electric guitar, and a beautiful acoustic guitar part is played over the top of it. It's a really unique effect. Definitely another highlight on the album, this one. More propulsive dubby bass underpins track 10, Claroscuro, with really drony guitar leads making for another unique psychedelic atmosphere. Maybe this track wasn't the strongest composition for me, but I loved the atmosphere and the mood. And in some ways, this song is the climax of the noisy shoegaze elements of the album. Track 11, Fue, or It Was, is another surprising change in mood for the album, because this time the arrangement is stripped right down. Some really nice chord changes in this one keep it compelling. A great vocal performance and a really nice use of trumpet add to the beautiful mood of this track. This feels like an ending, right? What's gonna happen in track 12? The last song, Textura, thwarts the dreamy fade away of Fue with a punk rock explosion. This may be a bit oversimplistic, especially compared to some of the layered sounds we've heard elsewhere on the album, but it makes for a fun and exciting closer. I like the feedback. So even though I went into this album knowing its reputation for being a bit more experimental with its shoegazing influences and all that, I was still quite surprised by the sound of this album, especially in the variety of the sounds across the album's tracklist. The thrill of a band making the music it wants to make in the face of commercial expectation is palpable and really exciting. And thanks to the diversity in the album's sounds and dynamics, this almost 1 hour long album doesn't feel like it outstays its welcome at all. It keeps me engaged because every time I think I've figured out everything the album has to say, it makes a left turn and takes you somewhere else. You know, to a dubby dance track or a psychedelic jam or just a catchy pop tune. Every time a new song starts, you get this refreshing feeling of, oh yeah, another new soundscape. Not every song here has a strong melody that is sticking with me after first listen. But you know, I said the same thing about Signos after my first time hearing that album. And most of those songs have grown on me so much. I think sometimes Cerati's melodies can just take a few listens, a few more days to properly sink in. But in this album, I was kept hooked throughout, almost just based entirely on the actual sound. And often the melodies, the song structures, were just a bonus on top of that. So I really enjoyed the album, and I'm already looking forward to hearing it again. So follow me over on Twitch at twitch.tv/JohnnyKaTrue to join me to listen to the album in full again at some point. If you enjoyed this video, please consider supporting me with the link in the description to buy me a coffee. I'll really appreciate it. It helps me to be able to keep making these videos, keep my channel going. And thank you very much for watching. Until next time, take it easy.